That's it. Finally got it. I knew it was one. I was thinking it was the red one.
I'm in the mood to tear it up.
Yeah.
I'm in my prime to tear it up.
Hey there, Philippe. Got your CDs to the other day? Yeah, I got it right to do.
Hey, Kathy. I just can't tear it up enough.
I got it on comments right now. It might not show your comments from your Periscope if you're seeing here. Yes, we're simulcasting. I'm also going to Facebook at the same time, Philippe. I think we got a pretty cool one for you guys tonight. You see what's cool. I can switch over here, but it's cool.
I really just can't tear it up enough.
Yeah, I've been most
we're both live. We're doing it through streaming.
I'm sitting on top of the world, nobody gonna get this down.
Just like I can stop it now.
Yeah.
Baby, I got everything with no strings attached. Here we go to having a party. I can't speak. Baby, just stay out of my kitchen. You can't stand the heat. You got to move that goal. I ain't gonna wait for you. Got to know how to play.
Yeah.
Can you share mine so if it does anything? I mean, we're going to see either one. Tear it up. Can't tear it up enough from the fabulous Thunderbirds. And I wanted you guys to kind of, so the title of this is Inside Baseball, which is American slang. And I'll leave this picture up for just a little bit longer because inside baseball is a term. It's not really about baseball anymore. It's a metaphor or a whatever. So inside baseball refers to the minutia and detailed inner workings of a system that are only interesting to or appreciated by experts, insiders, and aficionados. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what we think aficionados are, which that's us out here trying to do our news. So let me take this off and see our lovely faces. And I'll introduce the stuff to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of give you an umbrella 30,000 foot picture of how we see, not so much the entertainment industry. We don't have a lot on that, but with the military, the government, the different agencies, the corporate media, and how they're all on the inside of this big game that we're playing. And where the real divide needs to be. So we're going to kind of do an overview of everything that we're seeing, and how you see same messaging and same types of reporting, and it's just all when you see the video compilation videos of all the different local news stations, right, and they all sound exactly the same. Thing. And then we're going to go over some specific examples. Absolutely. And all of you people should know every one of these few examples that we have. We could have filled a 2-hour episode just naming and not even really talking about them.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure that maybe y'all can shoot us your
even
examples too when you see what we're talking about.
We're going to do a quick rundown on each of these just from basically our memory of some of the shenanigans these guys have been involved in. And then Yvonne's going to have a story about a local way about how she kind of with her group kind of penetrated the inside game and got in with the signals and kind of played their own game and won a small battle here locally. And then we're going to go over that time. We'll go over what we think are practical ways to go about getting your information and processing it and using your own discernment. So that's what we're going to kind of kick off with.
But I know you've seen that video from the comedian George Carlin where it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
Well, this is like they have a big league. They're like big league, and we're not even little league. we're not in it. But just knowing the inside game, there's an inside game and there's an outside game. And then there's all the rules that go along with playing this professional game. And
they have their rules, they have their own signals, their communication, the way they
their
talk to each other.
Terminology, and you'll see that in news stories. And we're hoping to point this out. And maybe it'll be kind of fun when you see a breaking story to kind of apply what we're telling you.
And then also, as one of the last parts of the group, is the workings of a system that are only interesting to or appreciated by. So we know, and when we say experts and inside, they are insiders, but experts, they gave themselves that title.
And there are experts. You know, I don't want to discount. We're not listening to experts, but the experts may not necessarily be who they're telling you are the experts.
Right, and we're going to hopefully teach people how to start stepping back when you see the stories and speeches and interviews, that you look at all these folks as what they really are.
Is in the chat room, and Scott Adams has been. Hey, Scott, very nice to get joined.
Cool.
But Scott's been talking about that. I just lost my train of thought because I saw Scott Adams in the chat room. But you've been talking about something that has to do with this.
Maybe it'll come to you. Because in the last group of this on Inside Baseball are aficionados. That's the people like us out here. We're interested in this, and we take it to heart, and we research. You know, us, you know, so-called little folk out here in the real world. You know, a lot of these guys are insulated.
Oh, I know what it was.
Go ahead.
It's about how the AI is already leading us. So when they come out with these breaking stories, or you're watching Fox News or CNN, and they've got the big banner, everything about that is meant to lead you in a certain direction. And from the headline, which sometimes doesn't match what's in the article. So yes, the AI is already leading you, but maybe if you're aware of what's going on, you can go in a different direction than maybe that they want you to.
And what we kind of want to get across also is that this red-blue left-right divide is false. It's made up. It's a false binary, and it's to keep us divided because, you know, we are the ones with the power. We just don't realize it. And a lot of us out here think we need to defer to these experts or defer to these talking heads. And I mean, what you know, a lot of these people get up and they say a so-called I'm a bedwetting expert. I'm like, where you know, how did he get that certification? So
well, they do that a lot, like on Fox and CNN, and it'll be an expert on, you know, on viruses or microbes and how they spread. But you'll look at how they, on the screen, they'll have what they are, and it's like somebody made that up. It wasn't necessarily earned.
Right. And so as part of this broad overview, we've highlighted some of these in previous broadcasts we've done. And of course, we had the picture of all the presidents together, the
Obamas,
the
Bushes,
George H.W., George W. and his wife, and Bill. Was Hillary in that picture? I can't remember.
But
not important. But
they're in the big club. They're in the big club that you are not in.
With their own little communication styles, the way they talk to each other. And so we want people to start seeing, when you see news stories and when you see speeches, like I said, and just interviews, and then way they, you know, even I went to a Trump rally a couple of, you know, back in 2016, we did.
Yeah.
And our representative, John Kelly, here in Mississippi 1, he reverted to a very strong Southern accent when he was talking to us out there. So we have discernment out here, guys, and people going about, you know, the plumbers and the electricians and construction trades and you know, CDL drivers. You know, you have discernment. You're a sovereign man or a woman, and you can make judgments on your own. You can research and you can make decisions on your own, and that's what we want to get across.
And when you start learning the inside game, the terminology and what they put in these articles or what they don't put in these articles.
Yeah, lies by omission. Sometimes
you can figure out just by reading the article, not being on the inside or in that big club, you can figure out what their inside game is. The story I'm going to tell you about in a minute is how that inside game, even though we're not in the big club, you can defeat them, especially on local level. And
that's the thing, to the point earlier, is that we actually have the power. A lot of us just don't realize it. We're too afraid to flex it. We don't like confrontation or whatever it is.
Right.
But when you do confront these folks, they're not demigods. They're human beings, and in a lot of cases, because of their corruptness inside, they're a little bit lesser because they really don't have a strong foundation.
Well,
And
I think it was Plato that said you can refuse to participate in the arena of politics, but you will be governed by your inferiors. And when I was real active in going to the county commission and the city council, the one thing that really struck me watching those people who were, passing laws is so many of them are not smart. Like, you have this idea about them. And also then they're not all, there's a lot of them that are smart, but they're human beings just like you. And once you start getting involved, and hopefully Lou and I are always encouraging you to get involved locally, because that's where all your power is.
right.
There was like me and my friend Jane, there were two of us, and we live in Shelby County. It's a 70% Democrat rule. And we took about 20 issues. We won 18 of them. And getting people to participate and go learn the inside and outside game
and on both sides, there's people surprised. You're surprised because, wow, this was kind of easy.
I was surprised
once we showed up.
When I went down there that the Democrats are very good. They're so much better at this game than Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
They were so much nicer to me than the Republicans. One of the Republicans, when I was going down there, was probably 6 months into me being active, and he asked me, are you guys going to come to every one of these? Are you going to come to every one of these meetings? And I said, every one that I can. And he was like, ugh, and walked off.
That's the other side of the coin. They're surprised because they're being confronted and pushed back against.
Right. But the Democrats, they would come and shake my hand. Hey, Miss Burden, how you doing?
And now that's another way. They're probably like, I know how to win this one over.
Right. Well, they did, because to this day, I like them a lot. And some of the Republicans.
But you would still oppose.
I would oppose what they're doing. And actually, I had developed a relationship with them where I could talk to them and tell them. And actually, we influenced several Democrats. Anytime we won an issue, it was obviously because we're in a 70% Democrat county. We always had to sway the Democrats.
And didn't some of those times, the 18 out of 20, the issues you were fighting against was something that maybe Republican office holders should have been fighting with you on that. And so that's why they're pissed.
And that's another thing you learn about inside game and outside game. Like once you start getting involved in this, you start seeing that it's not everything is what it seems.
And that's where we get to, there is true bipartisanship in this country.
Yeah.
It's just not the way they try to make, reach across the aisle and we got to come together. That's not that's what they say the goal is. The goal is to keep us divided.
Right.
The real bipartisanship is retention of power and money. That's two of the biggest things. And we liken it to this inside baseball. There's a big game. There's a league. We're not in it. And you've got farm teams. You got single A, double A, triple A. And this is where you get some of your talent, and you got the people. You get your foot soldiers, the teams themselves.
Right.
And so we got to start looking at it like that. The divide should be between those people in the league and
the people that consider themselves, elites, or the big leaders, or the people out here, the peasants who, don't usually have any say. But even in your media, you've got CNN. They'd be the big leagues, and then you've got state media. You've got your local media, and they would be, your.
And in the government, you've got the federal government, which is the major leagues, and you've got the governor, the states.
Yeah.
And then
you got your local, and all eyes are always on the furthest thing. We have hardly any power in Washington, D.C., unless it's like a major issue and you get everybody riled up. But there's dozens of issues you have no say in.
Here locally, you've got councils, you've got sheriffs.
The left came up with that slogan, think local, act local. And it's so true. You literally, if I had 100 of me and my friend Jane, I could change the direction of Shelby County. 100 dedicated people. But
so we've shown the presidents and their chummy relationships that they have. So last episode, we had talked about the Epidemic Intelligence Service and Dr. Langmuir. What a special guy that guy is. So he's
Epidemic Intelligence Service is a branch of the CDC that's been around since 1951.
51.
Okay,
It was
I thought
started
in the 70s.
during the Korean War to set up something that could give us warning about biological and chemical
That's right.
warfare.
But a lot all over the world, you saw with the
The
corona
messaging,
that
corona.
that everyone seemed to react the same way. They seemed to shut down some, masks. They all seem to do the exact same thing. They all came from
Epidemic Intelligence Service.
they train at Epidemic Intelligence Service, and then they go on to work for the World Health Organizations, or they go into different countries and in key places. It's kind of like the Soros plan in local elections to get a hold of these attorney generals in states.
Instead, he's got all the epidemiologists with this, and he was there from 51 and into the 60s. And last episode we had talked about the Tuskegee experiment, and during our research found that there was actually the prison in Indiana, Terre Haute, and I think it was in Indiana, and then also that we did the syphilis experiments on people in Guatemala. And even though they claim that there were no people given syphilis at Tuskegee, that it was just ones that already had it, but I think maybe that's kind of like a scrubbed situation, because the same doctor involved with the Guatemala experiments with syphilis, they gave them syphilis, and he was also involved with Tuskegee. So don't tell me he didn't do the same thing in Tuskegee. And then you find out that went on until 72, and Langmuir was there the whole time from 51 up into the 60s. And all his big things he'd like to talk about is surveillance, which they use. This is what the contact tracing is coming from.
Right. Okay.
And that the human population is actually the worst virus that we have on the earth, is that the population growth is the worst one. And so we got that big, a part of the league of the inside baseball. And
something interesting about that, when we were going back and researching this Lang, I can't say the name, is how they wrote about him in the press. It reminded me how they write about Mueller and Comey, how prestigious and well respected, and
he had his deep voice and a commanding presence. And then we watched
Mueller testify, and you're like, really? This
is the guy that we're supposed to be,
And they did the same thing, and we watched this video. We played the video on last month's, and none of what they said about him.
He's very demure. He's sitting there. He's very meek, and
he was reading. He was looking. He was literally looking down. He was reading off details about his
life. He had to read from a script the whole time.
Right.
And so then we're going to touch on some examples of this, what we see inside baseball between the crossover with journalists and public office and other companies. You've got all these different, they go back and forth, and some, they're married, their spouses are in the other, one or the other. Or
it's all a very incestuous.
Military officers that go to defense contractors when they retire, just by coincidence, a lot of times these contractors are what they were able to steer contracts to while they were in charge of things in the military. And some of them go to Silicon Valley companies as well. And it's just incestuous. And then the families of these people, the kids and the aides to the senators and the representatives, they all have a great thing going. And then the judge, you think about judges,
right?
We got a big fight coming up. And I'm telling you guys, a part of our messaging, usually in all of our scopes, is don't rely on a man to save you. And we talk about local now more and more.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to change and build your communities and get to know the people around you, because when things if they start to go bad, you need to know people around you and know what everybody's capabilities are.
Right.
But these judges, you just hope, they're thinking that Barrett's going to be the nominee. Well, don't get your hopes up, because as you've been dashed with John Roberts and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, if you think these guys are going to do some major good stuff for you, they all come from Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, Georgetown, but especially the first three. That's part of that club. That's one of their training institutions. That's part, where they have spring leagues and stuff. They're going to these schools and stuff, and it's all a nice little network.
It's not just it's almost like a whole, how Islam isn't just a religion, it's its entire political system. It's this big league encompasses everything. It's entertainment. It's just your social club. If you get involved in the GOP, if you get involved in your local GOP, you will quickly find out that it's nothing but a social club. And so And the same thing going on up there in DC when you'll see the pictures where they all attend the same party. You know, they have these huge, massive battles, and
they're on TV and they're going, by God, that Mitch McConnell, he's got to go, and you know, and
saying these horrible things about each other, and
then if we, you know, what's really going on in DC is they're all just hanging out together, probably in the same gyms, especially the same parties.
Yeah,
Philippe is he's got some intelligence background from days past, and he said not only that, they have access clearances already, and clearances are very expensive.
Yeah, as you know, what John Brennan, he got his pulled, didn't he?
Yeah, Trump pulled his.
You know, that's something very valuable to them. It's why these companies put them on their boards. It's for that connection to that classified.
Yeah.
It's got a monetary value to it.
And so, keeping in with our inside baseball motif, I'm going to show you guys. We're going to go through some examples. All of you, I'm sure, have heard of them. And using another metaphor for it is these people work hand in glove together. They're very tight. It crosses. It's all, you know, red and blue. It doesn't matter. They are on the same team.
Right.
But it's against us. And so we're going to go down to some examples that we have here. Let's see. Manners, brand. So here's a big one that's recent. Good old James Comey. So everybody knows who this is. Big controversy with him. And there's so much with him, but one of the things that they do with both him and Mueller is that, they're lifetime Republicans. If they thought Trump was bad, you got to take it for real because they're Republicans. Well, you know, Comey got his start because of Eric Holder.
Yeah, referred him to Clinton.
Mueller.
And
all of these, Mueller and him, they got their start
in the 90s.
Early mid to late 90s. And, you know, Mueller was noticed. He was noticed as a bright rising star by Eric Holder while he was working in the Janet Reno Justice Department under Bill Clinton.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, it doesn't even matter if they are Republican, but it's all just one team. It's uniparty. It's not bipartisanship.
Right.
And Comey was appointed during the Obama administration, and he started working into the Trump administration just for a short time. But Mueller worked for both parties. They, you know, this just a quick sideways with Epstein. A lot of the atrocious stuff happened under the Bush Justice Department.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Trump got in on the Justice Department.
Are you talking about the Obama? You're talking about
Obama?
No,
Obama. Yeah, but a lot of the bad deals and stuff came under Mueller and Bush's Justice Department.
Right.
So,
that's true.
So Comey, you know, but his thing is Comey. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So Comey, one of his little, what would you call it? He's got in his closet. He's got skeletons in his closet. Is his when he was on the HSBC board.
Right.
And I mean,
and there's
a
huge
lot
scandal
about that. And that has ties to Hillary and, you know, covering up back
before
then.
that. He would have also worked with Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
You know, same.
Another big defense contractor.
Right. Same league, big league.
Yeah. And so to do with the traditional terms of bipartisanship, we can show this lady, Elaine Chao. She's Mitch McConnell's wife. She was a senator. She is the labor secretary now.
I think so.
Yeah, I think she's labor. So she is involved with a lot of shipping stuff from, you know, via China and things like that. She owns a huge shipping conglomerate that's worth over $1 billion. You know, talk about, you know, we know Nancy, all these other guys have gotten rich while they've been in office. Well, her and Mitch McConnell are definitely some people that have done well.
Definitely.
When they've been in office. And then let's go back to the other side of the aisle. Here's a good old Hunter Biden. People go, where's Hunter? Well, here he is. But, you know, you don't, along with corporate media, you don't see the stories reporting on both. And actually, you see some hitting Elaine and Mitch McConnell, but it's just not hammered. Which that tells me that they're kind of in that class as protected.
You don't have the mainstream media going after Hunter for the money that he was making at a Ukraine.
And even before that, the deal when he's riding on the vice presidential plane trip through China with his dad, Joe Biden,
Right.
and gets those huge deals with those investment companies
So
out of China.
that's part of the inside baseball, but where it's not what they're putting in an article. They just don't cover it. That's part of the inside baseball game. It's how they help craft narratives or keep certain narratives out, out of the mainstream.
Oh, hey there. Let me come grab this.
All right. Pizza's being delivered. And I don't know if a lot of you know that Mitt Romney's son is involved with Burisma. Did Kathy or Dan, do y'all know about Mitt Romney's son? And it's curious to me that he's not ever brought up, because supposedly Mitt Romney being the Republican, they always go after the Republicans, but I guess he's in the protected class because he's anti-Trump too. So maybe there's that.
So here's one I wanted to show, and this is George Stephanopoulos, and I just picked this one, and I don't know if it's real or if it's been doctored, this photo, but I just thought this was funny because I know he is a short man. I don't know if he's that short, because that looks like, a little over 4 feet. I think he's taller than that. Maybe it's the positioning, the aspect or whatever, where he might be ahead of them a little bit too. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Thought that was funny. Good old George Stephanopoulos he's a big media guy. He's he's a journalist. So he's one of these so-called, people that speak truth to power. But he started, back in '88 working for Dukakis campaign for president. And in '92, he gets on with the Clinton campaign. He's one of the key communications people with the Clinton campaign, along with Carville. And
yeah, he was in charge.
Else.
He's so nonpartisan that he was in charge of the bimbo eruptions war room.
Where him and Hillary and the other ones helped, trash everybody.
Everybody now treats him like he had the interview with President Trump. Isn't he going to be doing one of the debates?
Yeah. And so he worked for Clinton. He was his chief communications, White House communications for the first term. So they finished up the first term, Clinton's term, and he goes to ABC, and he's been there ever since.
Right.
And his wife, what was her name? Amy Wentworth.
Yeah, she was on Seinfeld.
She's a real treat.
Oh yeah, we'll take that off ours. Stephanopoulos' wife, she was in Seinfeld. You might remember the episode where Jerry and his girlfriend are all lovey-dovey and schmoochy.
She gets kicked out of the Soup Nazi's kitchen.
Well, she made it into the news. I don't know, it was in the last few years.
Back.
Where she watches porn with her daughters
to help teach them about sex.
Yeah,
these guys are.
I'm guessing these guys they're fans of cuties.
Oh well, they would defend it for sure.
Yeah.
So then I just found this meme was funny to introduce our next candidate for corruption. If you've been set up by a hair salon, you may be entitled to compensation. I want to start seeing these commercials everywhere. Right now, it's all about the Boy Scouts. But, of course, this is who we're talking about, Nancy Pelosi. And, her husband has, what is it called? I wrote it down somewhere. He's got a real estate investment company that's worth a bunch of money. And Pelosi sits on the Appropriations Committee in Congress. Of course, she's Speaker of the House. But the Appropriations Committee gives, that's where the post office gets money from the federal government. And she helped. The deal got steered. They had a deal where the post office was selling a bunch of properties all over the country they didn't need anymore. Billions of dollar contract. Yeah. And they got a commission fee of like 9%, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. And so and there's been stuff with banks and stuff too.
The postal, what was it about the $25 billion?
Well, so now in the current bill that they're trying, that's not being agreed to with the COVID relief round 2, there's a $25 billion package in there for the post office again. And it's all to protect the voting, but only $1.5 billion of that is for the integrity of the mail.
Yeah. So
the rest of it is just, what is that?
Grifting. It's grifters. Money for grifters. And Dianne Feinstein has a similar situation with her and her husband, and she's in the top 1% with all the deals she's been in.
She had her little Chinese spy for 20 years, a driver.
Oh yeah, Chi-Fi.
Access to communications.
Yeah, and it's funny how Congress didn't seem real interested in finding or getting to the bottom of that.
Congress of both parties. I mean, even with Republicans in charge. So
Fun fact about Dianne Feinstein, you may not know, is if you're familiar with the
Harvey
Milk, there was a movie made about him. Was it called Milk?
I think so.
Dianne Feinstein was the last person to see him alive. A lot of people think she might have had something to do with his death. That's where she was. There was a mayor, the mayor of I don't know if it was San Francisco or wherever Harvey Milk was. And when Harvey Milk was killed, so was this mayor. And then Dianne Feinstein becomes mayor, and then that was like the beginning.
That was the launch of her inside baseball career.
Yeah,
she came out of the minors.
A lot of these characters have roles in past major incidents. Like Jackie Spear was one of the only survivors from the Jim Jones when the congressman went down to what was it?
To what? It was Central
right next
America.
to Suriname, not Suriname, but
Okay.
Guyana.
Yeah.
And she was I think she was the only survivor, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And
well, there was 3 congressmen that went down. The other 2 got killed.
But there was more people on the plane, and she was one. There might have been 1 or 2, but she was one of the few that survived. And then, bam, she works her way up. All those kind of.
And actually, Obama has a similar story for his rise, because when he first became a senator, his opponent was married to Jerry Ryan, and they made a judge unseal.
He was very popular. His opponent would have won.
So Obama basically got it to where he could just run unopposed in a couple of when he did state
he took him out when he got those records opened.
Yeah, some divorce records open, which had nothing. It was some seedy stuff, but it had nothing.
When you're in the league, you can do a bunch of inside stuff that we could never do.
And even when you're in the minors, I guess when you're in the minor leagues, like at the state, local governments, and in the periphery of DC, you're training for when you do get to DC.
Yeah.
And that's
if you'll take the knee to some of these big leaguers or bow down.
So here's our last example. Former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. He went over. He's on the board of Fox News now. And
remember when he used to sleep in his office in Congress?
Yeah, he's a worker for the people.
Who knows if that was even true?
Yeah, and then you look back and there's Rick Santorum and all these other guys. It sounds so good, and then what do they do?
Rick Santorum's on CNN.
Oh wow!
Every now and
I didn't
then.
even know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So those were our examples of Paul Ryan. He didn't really get much done in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency. People in the same party. That goes back to what I said earlier: is that the 2 people from both parties, they hate Trump.
Right.
Paul Ryan acted like he liked him, but he didn't do anything.
He didn't like
do him any favors.
We know that he didn't like him.
Yeah, he was upsetting the apple cart,
right?
The gravy train. It's not stopped by any means, but it has been.
So while everybody's focused on all those guys, all those big leaguers that we have no control over, because it's mainly because of logistics. They're so far away. All you can do is make phone calls. Most people don't have the money to travel around, but local is where it's all at. So I was going to tell you this story about.
Yvonne has a story, a particular example.
I was chairman of the local club of our Mid-South Tea Party. And so I paid attention to everything that was going on at the city council and the county commission. And I'm just going to give you this. This is probably midway through my activism. So I had learned a lot about so when you first go down to your local meetings and you watch, you start seeing the inside baseball. You start seeing the people that are huddling, behind their seats and talking as things are going on or texting. You see them pointing or winking. And one of the first things you notice when you go down there is how you'll be shocked at who's leading you, because they're mean. Some of them are very, very dumb. You know how who's the guy in the representative who thought that Guam might topple over? I forget his name. But you start learning a lot about these people who are leading you, and it's nothing like you have in your head. And so we took on this issue of, it was called wage theft. And the left was trying to say that there was a crisis of local businesses who were stealing wages from their employees. And what it was really about is Tennessee is a right to work state. And so what they try to do is pass legislation that would kind of basically pass like union-like rules, have it legislated into law, and that way it doesn't matter if you're a right to work state. So we were they had already implemented this policy in other cities, and so we were like, we can't let this happen here. So when we first started going and attending, we're just on a learning. You're there to see, read what they're proposing, and because what they do is they'll come out and they reach for the stars.
Yeah.
And then the Republicans or whatever will play ball and reduce it down. Oh, well, at least we stopped them from doing this. But they always inch one step further with their progressive plan. So we go, and I remember being in there, and it was me and a handful of people, and the room was packed full of union. I would come to later find out they were union-backed people, and they had T-shirts made that said wage theft or different things, and it felt very overwhelming. It felt very demoralizing, because I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have a chance in hell. And we would get up and speak and basically just ask questions. And what happened after that first day was they didn't have the votes to pass it. So they threw it back to committee. Now, keep in mind, it was supposed to pass that day. So when we caught wind, we're like, oh, holy cow. We were excited. And I thought it was just a handful of us and all these people and all this money in this professional game, basically of sports. And we got them to delay. And so what kept happening is it kept getting delayed, kicked back to committee. And this was going on for like 3 months. And then somebody on my team caught wind of the fact they were going to have a protest in front of a Holiday Inn. This Holiday Inn was owned by a Republican. I happen to think that's why they targeted him. And so we thought, well, they're going to go down there and protest Holiday Inn. We're like, Holiday Inn has not been accused of stealing wages from their employees. So let's go down there. Let's make some signs. And we strategically thought of, my favorite sign was, thou shalt not bear false witness. Because the organization that was pushing the wage theft was called WIN, Worker Interfaith Network. And basically what that was an acorn. When acorn went away, Worker Interfaith Network popped up. And so we went down. We had about 11 people, and it was starting at 11:30 on a Saturday. And so what we figured out is this was part of the inside baseball, where they were going to create this PR moment the Saturday before the vote at the commission on Monday. So they were going to create momentum by making it onto the local news and making it seem like, people are talking about it. They want this. So we get down there, and there's only like 2 of them, a couple of signs, and there's 11 of us, and we see it. One of the councilmen, and this was the county commission, but in order for this to pass, it has to pass at the county commission and the city council. It was going to have to pass the county commission first. This was a councilman, Myron Lowry. He pulls up at the same time behind him. News Channel 3 pulls up. Talk about your inside baseball.
And he was on the city council at the same time. He worked in the media locally. I think it might have even been Channel 3.
He did.
He had a show on the news at the news station. So that's a big marriage right there.
Yeah. So he's going to do his interview, and we all come out with our signs. We're going to have our signs behind him while he's talking. And he turns around and he's like, "Will y'all put your signs down?" I'm like, tell your people to put your signs down. And so one of the guys with the Worker Interfaith Network got on the phone, made a phone call, and in 10 minutes, the exact same number of protesters we had, they showed up with signs and T-shirts. And so I wish I still had, I need to find it. I wish I still had the news clipping, because the picture shows Myron Lowry, and behind him is all of us with our signs. And it was perfect. And what happened was we totally neutralized that strategy that they had, that inside baseball game of creating that momentum. And here's another side note. There were 3 black ladies on the inside of a Holiday Inn that had worked there. And when we got finished, doing our thing, they came in and they were in tears and they were thanking us. They said, because they love their boss. They said that they're telling lies about him in the news, and they couldn't believe, because they had been told that the Tea Party was racist. They couldn't believe that the Tea Party had showed up to defend their boss. And that was kind of a moving thing. So I'm going to wrap this up. So that Monday we go in to the committee meeting, and when I tell you this, I'm not exaggerating. I could feel the energy shift of us like you could feel the winning. So the guy that was with Worker Interfaith Network that had been at the protest, who asked us to put our signs down, and he had actually been at the other meetings and was very cocky. Well, that day, he was eating crow. They were asking him questions. They asked him questions. They used one of our signs, like, "You're a religious organization. Why are you bearing false witness against this?" So when they used our inside baseball, and then he said, "Well, I'm sorry about that. It really wasn't my choice. I didn't pick it." And it was then that I knew. I was like, it wasn't the final vote that day, but I knew then that we would win. And it took us a couple more months, but we won. And we were the first city that had stopped. And that's another thing. We went up against the unions, people on the county commission who were pushing it. This lady who worked with the local animal control, who used to work with the Department of Homeland Security, they had all been colluding to get this bill passed. And they spent $200,000, and our group spent $5,000. Money doesn't buy you influence. But if we hadn't been there,
or if you got to know that it's happening in the first place to be able to fight it,
right? If they win the Senate and House again, they better do some work. That's true, but the bigger question is, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
like. That was just one issue that we did, but in almost every one that we took on that we won. So in our communities, if people would just start doing that, this is what the left does.
Yeah.
When you're down there, everybody that's involved with like all these different commissions, they're all lefties. They're all busybodies, and we're going to have to become a bunch of busybodies if you want to win. So Trump and our elected officials in Congress, they're not all going to save us. They need to do their part. And they need to do better. But
just because you vote red ticket this, and you're worried about Texas turning blue or Florida turning blue, and North Carolina is probably turning blue in the end. And I look back in the years past with different administrations. Me and Yvonne were snowed too by the choice between George Bush.
Yeah.
And
I don't even remember who ran against John. Oh, it was John Kerry once, but the first time it was Al Gore.
Yeah, Al Gore.
But I don't even remember who the other Republicans were that were running against George Bush. I just remember thinking,
that he's the guy. He's going to be great.
George Bush was not. No, but he wasn't our choice back then. That wasn't
But when he was the nominee, we got behind him. We went to a rally, and we were like George Bush all the way. And then we got fooled into the Iraq War just like everybody else. But you look back. How much worse would it have been if Al Gore had been elected instead of George Bush? Because how many soldiers, how many people in the Middle East were killed because of these wars that we got light into?
They probably would have done the same thing.
And that's another difference in this administration at present. Say what you will about Trump, but he hadn't started any new wars. He doesn't do these drone strikes like Obama did. Obama killed American citizens. Yeah. Just executed them with a drone. So if they had beheaded the American citizen, it would have been an uproar. But because it was a drone strike, there's not really any pushback on it. Everybody talks about
he's disconnected from the.
Obama wins the Nobel Peace Prize going into office, and he drops more tonnage in the Middle East than since the Iraq War.
Yeah.
So what we want to do now is just kind of we need some practical ways we think you can use just to receive the information we're getting. There's so much out there, and just look at CBS and ABC, NBC, CNN have all. You could just by naming one example on each, like CNN with the koi fish feeding in Japan when Trump went to, and him and Melania were visiting the emperor there, and CNN cuts off the video and shows Trump dumping the food into the koi pond. And all these experts came on. He's killing those fish. He has no idea what he's doing. He can't even do that right. And when you see the whole video, he was just following the emperor's lead. The emperor did the exact same thing.
And see, that's another thing that when they report that's not fake news. It's not like they got the story wrong.
That's what it is.
It's their inside baseball. This is how they're going to frame the story.
And that's, fake news has it fulfilled a useful purpose.
It did.
But
it's much more sinister.
It's just media. There is no fake.
It's mockingbird media, and it's intentional.
And so then there's the example with NBC. They tried to use Kentucky gun range footage to show that because Trump pulled a couple of dozen special forces out of Syria, that now there was a massacre going on and the Kurds were getting killed. And it was gun range footage. That was not a mistake. In Kentucky.
Yeah, that wasn't a mistake.
And so think about it. You've got all these different corporate media entities. They've lied to you or by omission or overtly once. So take everything else that same way. Look at it. We've also found, look at the names of the authors of these. Sometimes I wonder if they're even real. Yeah. Because their names will
some
match
of them
up.
Are.
Some you do because of their.
But some of them you do wonder.
You wonder.
And that's what we want you to do. So when the next time that you see a breaking news story, the first thing you want to look for is who's the outlet that broke it. Because as you know, like whenever I see stories from David Korn or anybody that were the first three to, I think Ignatius, to publish the dossier, I'm already my feelers are up, going, okay, I'm going to be suspicious reading this. So, and then after you look at the author, go ahead and read the article, and then ask yourself who benefits from this and who gets hurt from this. And then, if you wait 2 or 3 or 4 hours, you'll see, the update or the correction on.
Yeah, it's usually an update.
Yeah.
We erroneously reported blah, blah, blah.
No, they didn't erroneously report anything.
And that's what I get. I want to, speaking to people out there like, I won't say names, but other journalists out there that go, how can they not get this? And I go, they do get it.
They do
Stop acting like these are mistakes.
Right.
It's the story they're trying to tell.
It's inside baseball. So can we start playing like
glove in hand,
like we know their hand, like we know what they're doing?
Glove.
The
media works hand in glove with all the politicians.
And so when they come out with this big breaking story, they're looking for an initial reaction from you. And so we're asking you not to give it to them. Do a little bit of homework. They always have, I can't think of like the trigger words or like words that they use right off the top of my head. But they'll use certain words to trigger you. Don't let it trigger you. So figure out, and this might actually be kind of fun, you guys, to try to figure out on the next big breaking story. Okay, so what's the inside baseball? What's their goal? Because it's not what they're
and also especially when you see multiple outlets saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That should be an alarm, because if these are competitors, they're competing against each other, why do they all have the exact same product?
Right. And then when somebody comes out with a counter argument and they start calling them a conspiracy theorist or calling them QAnon or something.
That's a good one. Are they addressing what the one pushing back said,
or are they
just starting to smear them?
Right.
Or they discount it, go, oh, he's a kook that you don't even have to listen to what he has to say.
That's part of their inside baseball is how they do that. So we're just kind of going through the process of thinking how we can defeat them in their strategy. That's their inside baseball. So let's come up with, the way that we did on the local level, let's come up with our own inside baseball. And you strategize. So, and we can do this as a collective, like-minded patriots can start looking at this and connecting and then flipping it. It's kind of like, just like what Mike Cernovich did when they first started using the term fake news. They did it, I think it was within days of the Trump election, and they immediately started trying to label people fake news, that people like Mike Cernovich and others, in order to smear them, because they wanted to ruin their credibility, so they couldn't keep influencing people. And immediately he goes live and does a Periscope, he tells everybody this is what they're doing, and then he says find a link to any fake news story that you and use the hashtag fake news.
Yeah.
And that whole week we were just hammering the media and putting back in their face, fake. Yeah, you're right, fake
Just
news.
flipped it.
And then there was a press conference
And
where Trump called. He said, "You are fake news," and that totally flipped their strategy. They lost. We won that game.
You know, and you guys stop being beholden or enamored of your favorite shows that you watched, news shows or whatever. Because I used to like Fox. I haven't watched it in over probably 3 years now, and boy, do I not miss it.
Uh-huh.
And I get enough of it when
You see the clips.
you see 2-minute clips of Tucker Carlson, and it's kind of great what he does most of the time. But I really don't care anymore, and I don't watch any of them anymore.
Fox is an enemy of the people of everybody.
They're in the club too, and they have.
You saw how Harris Faulkner reacted when they when Newt Gingrich mentioned George Soros and his.
That's how they all Melissa Francis and
Maria Harf.
Marie
Harf. That's another one.
That's another one.
She came from the Obama.
Yeah.
She was a press
secretary.
Communication. Yeah.
For State Department
Obama.
or something, or for Obama. Or was she State Department?
Maybe it was State
I think
Department.
she was State
I'm not
Department.
sure.
And then all the ones that should be in trouble for what happened with all the spying, they're all have gigs on the major networks.
Yeah. So when you're doing this and you're trying to pick this apart and trying to figure out, okay, what's the inside game here? What are they doing? William Safire wrote an article in 1988. It's called "On Language Inside Baseball." And this one sentence, he says, "The style of play in which the offensive team tries to score one run at a time through such tactics as the bunt, the steal, the hit and run, the well-placed hit, and the squeeze." So if you think about these articles, like they're tactics, and where they're trying to score one run at a time.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's undo.
Put it back. And to decipher through it would be fun if we did a hashtag Inside Baseball and started calling out and saying, "Oh, look at this article."
Oh, look. And then
they're playing. I see the pitcher and the catcher over here doing whatever.
Right.
They're signaling this. This is what they're signaling.
Especially when you see all the different outlets on the same page. Oh, I get it. This is Inside Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just trying to think of ways that maybe we can turn this around on them. The AI is leading all of us.
More and more of us saw through this, and we want to get more and more people to see people as they really are, and not because they got an R or a D in front of their name on the screen on TV.
Right.
And so I have, I don't even have any respect for our representative here anymore. He was in the Iraq War. He was released recently, last couple of years, promoted to brigadier general. He's in the reserves, but what does he do? I never hear from him. I never see anything. I don't even see mailers.
I don't see anything.
He usually runs unopposed in his primary. He's got a Democrat opponent, but she has no chance.
Right.
So he banks on that.
Right.
That he takes a lot of it for granted. And so just remember, see these people for who they are when they're speaking and using glowing terms, or the way they've named their bills. The Patriot Act. Yeah. There's nothing patriotic about that thing.
The Affordable Care Act.
And all of these things have gone against the Constitution, and these guys all swear oaths to protect. And Kelly would have done it in the military and when he got to Congress.
Right.
And he's doubly in there as swearing an oath to the Constitution, and he doesn't protect.
So
the Constitution.
it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. And also, when you see breaking stories that are exposing the corruption, little by little, and maybe it's beneficial for Trump. But you have to remember a lot. It's like it's coming from these mainstream outlets, and they have an inside game on it. Like with the Lisa Page and Peter Strzok text, that was a controlled demolition. Yeah. That information was coming out, so they were going to control the demolition. So when it does look like there's more that's going to be exposed,
because there's something coming soon now on another.
So here's what I want to have when it's Washington Post or whoever it's coming out and revealing this. And it's a huge story. Let's not let them minimize it. They're trying to blunt the actual, or they don't want the exposure of Spygate happening like a neutron bomb. They want it to be, just like a smaller.
Trickle it out and let
so
it get
when
absorbed.
they do that, we can start calling out with the inside. Oh, you're trying to minimize and call it out. What it is. I think that.
It's just more important to be a part of the pivot, mature, Bears than political games. Yeah,
So
you're
I hope-
right, Philippe.
I hope that you found this.
The pivot is good. We've talked about that before.
I know
We need a pivot. Maybe a hashtag Inside Baseball will help us spread the word, and it just not just on social media, but in our conversations, in our communities, and our friends and stuff. Is get people to see it. Now, vote for however you're going to vote, but don't put a lot of cachet in it, or don't put a lot of hope into who you're voting
Any one
for.
man, because
Yeah.
it's actually going to be us. Like Obama said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So I hope that you'll do that. Look for that next big breaking bombshell, and then start picking that ball game apart. Look for let's figure out what the inside game is.
Yeah.
And then next month we should be on time.
October 15th.
October 15th. We're running late. This is the Ides scope that we always do every month. But Lou was out of town.
I had to go out of town, and I'm still will be, but we're trying to work out some kinks to where we can still do it even when we're not in the same city.
Right. So I really appreciate y'all joining, and I hope you'll share this.
Thanks, guys. Share it. Remember, hashtag Inside Baseball.
Inside Baseball.
Get
Yeah.
people to watch this and just start looking at it like that. It's a game. It's theater. Just
Right.
start seeing it that way, and don't take it as seriously. Have fun with it.
It is a game. It's theater, but there's lives at stake.
Yeah.
And if we can start turning this around on them, I think we will have succeeded when they start calling us cute.
Yeah.
If they start calling us cute, but anyway, thank you
All right,
guys for
well.
watching.
We'll see you next month.